Hi, can you run a Mercury 125 horsepower 1999 two-stroke without the thermostat? Technically, yes, you can. Do you want to for a long time? I would say no. The issue with so the thermostat regulates your temperature of the engine. So it uses cooling water to keep the engine running at a specific temperature because you have all kinds of issues going on with running an engine in water. You're using raw water to cool an engine. Engine's creating heat. The water is cooling it. If you run in too cold of water and the engine runs too cold, you can create condensation. If you create condensation on a four-stroke, you can accumulate water in the crankcase. So let's say you take your engine and you remove the thermostat out. It's a four-stroke and you run in 50-degree water. Let's make it easy. You run in like 40-degree water, super cold water. The engine is probably super cold outside and you're running this engine and the engine's supposed to be getting up to, let's say, 143. That cold water flowing all the time through that engine because there's no thermostat, it's just dumping that water. The engine's temperature is going to be probably 105, 110. I mean, it's going to be running stupid cold. When it runs that cold, the heat that is created from your cylinders firing and inside the crankcase is going to create the hot, you got, heat buildup, cold air, and moisture because you're on the lake or on the ocean, and the moisture in the air is going to be very, very high. So the two differences in cold and hot creates condensation. That condensation is now going to be in your crankcase and it's going to go down into your oil pan. You run that engine like that for, let's say, 50 hours. How much water is going to accumulate in your oil? Now all of a sudden you're running diluted water oil to lubricate your engine. It's going to cause a problem. On a two-stroke, generally, I mean, you're putting oil into the engine, but virtually think about it the same way. You are putting that condensation into the engine and the ports from the crankcase are going in to the cylinders. So that condensation is going to be fed to your engine. So now all of a sudden you're running not a lot, but you're running water into your cylinders. You're going to be rusting plugs, you're going to be rusting rings, you're going to be rusting everything because it's creating condensation. Will it hurt over the short period of time? No, it's not going to do anything. You could run probably quite a few hours without ever experiencing anything. If you run a long term on something like that, 125 horsepower, it's probably a four-cylinder, 1999. If you run a few hundred hours on that, you'll probably shorten the life of that engine, and eventually a ring's going to fail, or you're going to have failures occur because it's not getting the proper lubrication and you're burning water. So would I do it in the long term? But again, that depends on where you're at, because if you're running in 90-degree water and the outside air temp is 90 degrees, you got heat and heat. So it's not, your engine's probably going to get up to temp. It's not going to create that condensation. So really quick break to the video here. I just wanted to let you know about our school community. The Boaters program is now part of a school community. And if you would like to learn more about your boat, participate in live questions and answers every single week, as well as access hundreds of videos to teach you all kinds of skills about your boat that are not on YouTube, you can join that community using the link in the description and then clicking join now or visiting bornagainboating.com. A lot of variables there, really. I mean, there's not really like a cut and dry answer as there is with most boat stuff, because there's not, there's thousands of different engine models, thousands of different air temps, thousands of different elevation. Well, they're not thousands of different elevations, but I mean, I guess you could from 0 to 8,000 feet above sea level. There's a bunch of elevations, water temperatures, like a bunch of stuff. So 1957 Cajun, what I don't get about this whole salt away thing is this. Salt away basically dissolves salt. Well, so does water. So tell me again what the point of using salt away is. Salt is corrosive. The issue here is not necessarily the dissolving of the salt, but what salt leaves behind. So the best way that I can describe this, again, I'm not a chemist and I do not really understand, the chemical breakdown of water, salt, minerals, all the other stuff. But I do know that salt, basically, as it dissolves and goes away, it has, in an electrical term, it has a positive and a negative ion. So whenever those positive and ion dissolves away, they react. And when they react, it creates the pitting. It eats metal. It creates basically a positive and a negative. You got a little, let's call it an explosion. It's not really an explosion. It's not really how corrosion works, but it does work in that fashion where you have a positive and a negative ion and they react together, which eats into your metal. So every time you have salt on something and the water evaporates, the salt is left behind. It doesn't really dissolve it. It dissolves it to a point, but when it evaporates, the salt is left behind. And then that salt, the positive and the negative ions or molecules, whatever it is, the atoms, that is what starts to eat metal and pit stuff. Salt away, you spray salt away on there and it basically dissolves or neutralizes the positive and the negative. So now you just spray the salt away on there and the salt away you leave it on there. When it dries, it has neutralized that positive and that negative. So it neutralizes that effect that creates massive corrosion. So that's a very roundabout way to describe how salt away works, and why you would want to use it. So depending on where you're at would determine whether or not you want to use it. Like, so especially up north. So, you wouldn't think about it. Well, I mean, I guess you would if you live up north. When they salt the streets, you're running your cars through all that salt. So now all of a sudden, every winter, you're just throwing salt up on the bottom of your car. And then when you go put your car away, the water dissolves. Now you got all this, you got this salt sitting there. So some people, after the snow, they'll take salt away, spray off the bottom of the car, and boom, you've neutralized that effect. So it'll minimize the rust and the damage that it does. Gareth Barker, is it okay to use standard ATF in the trim motor? Yeah, you can. I think it's just Dextron 3 or something like that they want you to use, but virtually, I say virtually because again, there's thousands of different engine models out there, but virtually every one of the brands say if you don't have anything else like our brand of trim fluid, then ATF is fine. So yeah, for the most part, yeah. Let's just say Brian here says, one cool and practical feature I've seen on boats in Australia is the hand washing feature. A stainless steel button is flush mounted in the gunnel at knee height near the back of the boat. The idea is when hands are dirty, walk over and press the button with your knee and water comes out of a through-all fitting just below the rub rail for 5 seconds or so for a hands-free operation and without having to lean over the side of the boat to reach the water surface to rinse your hands. That's pretty slick. I do like that. I like that. I think that's why we added that one in here, because that is a pretty dope feature. I mean, like, depending on how you use your boat, if you're fishing a lot and stuff like that, and you don't, depending on where your washdown is and how you use that, I mean, that's pretty slick. Thank you, Brian, for that comment. That's it for this week. See you guys next week. So if you like this clip and you want to watch more, you can see another one over here or watch the full episode over here.